So I pre-cut this mannequin using more tension up into the occipital bone and then less tension as I worked my way all the way to the top of the head. The way that I used less tension is I actually wet all of the hair to the occipital bone, and I used a smaller comb, like a finer tooth comb rather than a wide tooth comb. So I felt like that was really important to get that like tighter to the nape shape and then more of a fluid, soft shape through the top. With this, I haven't really styled it out fully yet. I've just created more of like a wet shape and then put in a leave-in conditioner. So now everything's gonna dry and then we're gonna expand it. So that's when you'll really start to see the difference in using cutting wet or cutting with dry hair and then different types of combs. So this is the side we're gonna cut today, and I sectioned everything from the occipital bone to the top of the ear, and then everything here is gonna be wet. So I'm gonna re-wet all of this, and I'm gonna show you how I do my sectioning for a short graduation, all the way up to the occipital bone, and then I'm gonna switch and I'm gonna start cutting dry hair with a different comb. Thank you everyone for putting where you're from. If you have any questions, also feel free to ask me. This space is all about sharing, so I want to make sure that we all get as much from it. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do, I've wet the hair. Make sure to really saturate it, and then you want to comb the hair with a fine tooth comb in the direction that you're going to cut it. So I'm going to take my first section, I'm going to hold it with my finger in place. That just helps this hair above it stay out of my way. That's why it's really important to comb the hair with a fine tooth. Make sure it's flat using the back of the comb, then use your finger. I'm going to take that first section, just taking one section, and I'm just going to over direct it to wherever I want the graduation to sit. So see how I've only lifted? And then we're going to lift again. And I'm going to use the guide from before just to connect it there. This is from the graduation that I did previously. Now I'm going to take my second section. Same thing. This time I'm going to over direct the hair going up. And then I'm going to comb the hair going down. So same thing. Section 1 goes up, and then section 2 goes down. Okay. So now we're going to go into section 3. I'm going to move the mannequin a little bit closer so you can see. Section 2 is going into section 3, and then I'm over directing 3 down to 2. Like I said, I don't really like to use a lot of clips, so I'm only using the one that shows me where I'm going. So throughout, I just need to re-wet the hair to keep it all really clean. Okay, so now we're gonna go into, this would be section 4. Section 3 goes into section 4, and then section 4 is over directed down. Great. So I've seen a lot of different ways to cut graduation. Sometimes we do it with the vertical section, sometimes we do it with the horizontal section. With curly hair specifically, I like to do it this way. That way I can just see how the hair is falling. Making sure to count the sections every time. My favorite part about curling curly hair is doing the dry cutting and going through and really shaping everything and creating all those details with the hairline. Okay, so all of this you can see is previously cut, and I've left out my hairlines because we're going to do that later. And just making sure that I'm connecting to the hair that I previously cut. Great. Is there anything specifically that anyone wants to hear about with precision cutting hair and how it relates to cutting texture hair? I'm now going to switch over to my wider tooth comb, and I'm going to start to cut all of this dry. So you can also tell that I'm taking a little bit larger of a section. I want all of this to be really soft, and I wanted the underneath to be really tight. So when I use a wider tooth comb, I'm going to brush through the ends, then the middle, then the root to make sure it's really diffused. Then I'm going to come through and I'm going to take that last section that we cut. I'm going to lift it up, and now everything's going to be over directed down to the occipital. Right? And then you'll also notice this particular wide tooth comb has shorter or like a finer tooth, and then it has like a really wide tooth. So a lot of the times I'll take my sections with the wider tooth, and then I'll come through with the finer tooth to actually cut the hair. So same thing, lifting up and then over directing down. I'm not in the salon this week, but every other week I'm in the salon. So I'm thinking that a lot of you are also in the salons, and maybe if you're central, you're, on lunch, or if you are Pacific time, you're just starting your day. So now I want you to see, as I go through my section, instead of just going triangular, I'm going to start to go a little bit more round. And then I just comb through. And then we're just going to use a little clip. Make sure that everything's brushed out and diffused really, really well. Lifting up. Making sure too, even though I'm working on a mannequin and I'm filming, that each section's coming straight out from the head, and then we're going to take a step to my right, and I'm going to continue to work that way. So we're going from more of a triangular shape into now more of a round cutting line. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask me. I know as artists, we all cut hair so differently, and that's the really fun part. It's keeping it creative, learning from one another. So I want to share with you, and I want you to share with me. Okay, so now I'm going to take our next section with my wide tooth part of the comb. Is it cutting the foundation that you like more, or is it, here, I'm going to tilt this a little bit, or is it doing all of the refining? So back again, my body position is turning all the way over and I'm right behind the mannequin. And then as I continue forward, I'm gonna step around, creating more of a round shape with that graduation. And everything's being over directed down to the occipital bone where we built up the graduation initially, because I want everything to go into more of a triangular shape, especially when we diffuse it. Sometimes another thing I do is I'll lift as I cut. That helps just soften the shape a little bit more when you do a little bit more elevation. It makes that cutting line not so harsh, just makes it just a little bit softer, which is something that I really like to see in precision hair cutting, which is why I also think that I really love curly hair. I like everything to be soft and really feminine, but still really clean. You can start to see the shape growing from the camera, which is really nice. So a little bit about me. I started Form about 8 years ago, and it started as an education company. So at that time, there wasn't a lot of precision hair cutting happening in independent education. There was, of course, with the brands, but not as much with independent. So that's when we launched Form Hair Education. It started from us traveling a lot overseas and wanting to just share that information with everyone in the States. Now there's a ton of options, which is awesome. My favorite part about doing all of this is meeting everyone, so I can't wait to go back through and see where everybody's from and see what you're doing. I think that that's really important for us to just keep growing as a community. So you can see we just do like the ends, and then I'm coming through the middle, and then I come through the root. Then I'm gonna come back to the center back, just like I have before. And I'm gonna make sure with the wide tooth comb now, like the very largest wide part, that I'm over directing and then just cleaning up a little bit of those ends. It's really important through here to pay attention to the root. So I'm looking at the top of the mannequin, then I'm brushing it straight down. Then I'm coming through. As I said, if I want it to be a little bit more soft on the ends, I'm just gonna elevate a little. I'm just cleaning up all of those little hairs that we need to blend. Great. So now I'm going to go through and I'm just going to re-wet the mannequin. Specifically going through anywhere that hadn't previously been wet and spraying the roots in the middle and then the ends. Want to make sure it's evenly saturated, not just the ends. This is also really important when you're applying product. Also, if anyone wants to share their favorite curly haired product within R&Co, I would love to see that as well. Curly haired clients always tend to have their favorite products they've been using forever. Okay. So now I'm doing this thing where I'm just kind of smushing the hairline, going in a circular pattern. And then around the face. Just re-wetting the fringe and then showing you how I styled out the front through here. So we're going to blend those together so that she doesn't have a middle parting. Okay. So I'm going to take a little bit from the hair that we already previously had styled. Since it's my lovely mannequin, I'm going to really make sure I manipulate the roots. I like to stretch the hair over direct. So now I have a diagonal section that's going to blend the hair from either side. And then I'm just twisting and then just kind of shaking to soften that a little bit more. And then as I continue around the hairline, just taking diagonals. This is just going to give it a little bit more shape around the hairline, but then when we go through the top, it's going to really be diffused out, which I'm going to show you on the other side while this one dries. Great. I really find shaking them out after you do this is very important, especially with really curly hair, or otherwise it's going to dry just like that and you want it to look a little bit more diffused. So now I'm going to take the wide tooth comb again. I'm going to take a horizontal section and I'm going to start to just brush that out and then smush it in. So this side needs to dry before we can do anything else, which would basically be going back through and doing all of the hairlines. So now I'm going to go back to this side that I've already previously cut. So now we're just going to go through everything above the occipital and I'm just going to kind of brush it out. Just on the ends, just to give it that really like diffused texture. As I get a little bit higher up, you're seeing that I'm lifting because I really want to over exaggerate that triangular shape. So I wanted her to have this like cute little baby fringe, have this tightness in the nape, and then just be able to wear it really natural and really flowy. Going back to the wet side, this isn't completely dry, but you can start to see, well, I can definitely see that the hairline is starting to dry a little bit. So I wanted to show you a little bit of tricks on how I would cut the hairlines. So going through with the smaller brush, I also want to look at, okay, so I previously cut this side. Let's go a little bit tighter. And then we want to look at what type of shape you would want. So a lot of times it's visual. Sometimes you can use your comb to really get in there, just to try to visualize it. I always find that that is kind of the hardest part for me because I always want everything to be really soft. And a lot of the time in my training, everything's been really hard where you'll go in and you'll just cut out all of this hairline. So you can do it where you just do it in your comb, and that way you can see your shape. And then you can just come through and you can cut that way. Or you can come through and just like freehand it. Just using clip cutting right now, and then when the shape is more dry, then I go through and I'm gonna use a little bit of point cutting. And then same thing in here. I look to see where is this curl falling. So I see this one right here, and then I see where I think this is gonna fall. Normally we want this to be completely dry before we would do this, but for this, I want to go ahead and show you. So I brush it out because I want this to be a little bit tighter, and then I look at where I wanna go. So I'm just gonna come through and just club cut to that curl. And then you can come back through and then just point cut, softening the shape. Yep. As it starts to dry, then I do a little bit of like surface cutting, picking out different curls and seeing where they want to fall, making sure to look at where the curl pattern is and follow along there. So like this one, for example, you could pull that guy out and then just give it a cut and then just smush it back into place and see, does that fall? Am I liking this shape? Okay. As I work around the hairlines, I'm gonna see the same thing, balance out the shape. How in here, I went really soft and I went really round, and I want that same thing here. So now that I've connected behind the ear and in front of the ear, I want to connect what's happening in the hairline to the fringe. So I'm gonna go in visually and just club cut and then point cut and then just see how it falls. Curls are tricky because they dry all different ways, so you have to really, every curl has its own shape. So you have to really see, okay, this one needs to be a bit shorter. Yeah. So you can start to see through here that it's starting to have the same shape that it did on the other side. This is the dry side. Great. At this point, I mean, all there really is to do is to go through and just see with the white wall any kind of little hairs that need to be cut. So like I said, you can point cut, you could surface cut, just really expanding the shape and then going through and cutting each little curl to fall into its perfect place. On the side that I cut the graduation on, I need to actually let this completely dry to go back through and finish it. So what I will do is let it dry, and then I will come through and cut it and then place it on my Instagram. If you guys want to go to that, it's Whitney Haynes Form. And then that way you can see the complete shape, and I'll do even like a video so you can see the whole, all sides of it. But But just to recap, I mean, what we did today was precision on textured hair. We did a graduation that was tighter up to the occipital bone using a finer tooth comb. And then we switched and we actually cut on dry hair and we used a wider tooth comb. Making sure that our sections went, instead of being triangular, they went a bit more round, and I followed a round cutting line, making sure that my body position was behind the mannequin, and then at each type that I over directed, I took a step to my right so that the section was right in front of me and I was pulling it to my chest, which I think really helps keep that. Otherwise, it's very easy to go into a triangular, and that's not what we wanted to do here. We wanted to go into a bit more round. So after we did that, we re-wet all of the hair. Then you could go through and you could add a little bit of product. Sometimes what I do is I'll mix a little bit of High Dive into my water bottle, and then I'll shake it up really good. I just find that this has a really good hold, so that's why I was curious what products you guys were also really liking. Then we let it completely dry, and then sometimes I'll add a little bit of serum. But that's typically after I've gone through and really done that external shaping and cleaned it up that way.